we're nearly 2 years into the generative AI revolution, and there are now thousands of startups. So, do you have a mental model for how you go about categorizing all these new generative AI companies? Madhu, do you want to go first?
We come from data science backgrounds, and we run a fund that's a very data science heavy fund. And so, I don't know, if I should start, but I think the most appropriate thing would be to start with just giving you a quick introduction to Rocketship. Rocketship.vc, both of us are managing partners here. It's a data-driven fund. What we mean by that is that we are investing in companies, just like, it's a typical venture capital fund with one difference. Our deal flow comes from our algorithms. We have the largest startup database in the world. It's terabytes of data. And we have a ton of models that run to find out the companies that we want to invest in. And so that's how we find and invest in companies. And so because we are so data driven, and we use, we also use Gen AI in our own models now. We were excited to see, a brand of companies emerging. Although for us, AI is just table stakes in everything that one does. Historically we've kind of looked at a lot of companies, and this has been done for a very long time. But now with the spate of companies that have just come up in the last 2 to 4 years, we've been looking at it in-house to see what is going to be the companies that we get most excited by. So there's foundational models, there's the picks and shovels, companies that do foundational models, companies that do picks and shovels, and then there is the final frontier of application companies. And we've looked at all of them, and I'll let Sailesh expound on each of these three buckets as we've been looking at it.
Absolutely. As Madhu mentioned, the fact that we are quant investors or algorithmic investors gives us a very unique perspective on the full spectrum of companies that our algorithms see. And if you take the first category that Madhu mentioned, which is foundational models, initially you would have thought of that as just models that were created by large companies, the Anthropics, the Coheres, and of course the OpenAIs of the world. And both Facebook and Google have their large foundation models. And the initial thinking there was these are very, very large models. They will become sort of a key ingredient across many different applications. But then as the space developed, our algorithms started identifying that there's the original class of foundational models, but then there's new classes of foundational models that are arriving as well, where you're either limiting the vocabulary on which the model is built, or you're changing the language on where the model is built. And when I say changing the language, I actually mean not just language from a natural language perspective, but applying this to genomic data, where the language is genetic expression, applying this to images, where the language is pixels, applying this to video, applying this to data coming from climate change, where the language is perhaps the natural processes. So new classes of foundational models are being created to really bring this large language revolution from traditional language to anything that we construed as language. In fact, one of the most innovative uses of this we saw was considering motion as language. We think of motion very much in the physical world, but motion can be decomposed into components as language as well. So that's the foundational model. The second class are the picks and shovels, as in the model, as in the companies that are enabling this transition to happen, but they are not necessarily the ones building the core foundational models. They're not necessarily building applications either. And so examples here are vector database companies trying to create ecosystems where these models can be computed, they can be refined, fine-tuned, as well as eventually tested in real-world situations. And without these picks and shovels companies, common users are not able to take advantage of these models. Only large companies with large development teams can. And so these are an integral enabler class of companies, and we are seeing several exciting examples there as well. But the last category, and this is really where the meat of the Gen AI revolution is in core application development, where Gen AI is an integral part, but not the only thing in the solution. So you're trying to solve an existing really hard problem, and Gen AI was the missing piece that was needed in order to make that solution much more workable today than it was in the last 15, 20 years. And that's also something that Madhu was mentioning. We've been watching this transition for the last 15, 20 years, but this material change that large models brought about was that missing piece where you can have a reasonably high quality customer support conversation, but then actually also expect the system to understand enough to actually execute a solution and really solve the person's problem, rather than just wasting time collecting information and eventually handing off to a human customer support person. I think that translation from a surface level model to deeply solving the problem is what we are seeing in this third class of applications. And we are seeing this in pretty much every space that is out there. There's almost not a single area, whether it be accounting or genomics or healthcare or gaming, anything and everything that today we can think of from an innovation perspective has and is being impacted by the Gen AI wave.